The Zarnax Galactic Empire wasn't just another run-of-the-mill intergalactic bureaucracy. No, they were special in the way a toxic garbage fire is special. Their thousand-year history of oppression had been meticulously crafted into a cultural cornerstone that would make medieval patriarchies look like progressive summer camps. When humanity first encountered the Zarnax, the initial diplomatic transmission seemed routine. A massive holographic projection flickered to life in the United Nations Assembly, revealing a creature that looked like a cross between a lobster and an angry filing cabinet. Ambassador Krell Nax, the lead Zarnax representative, spoke with the kind of condescension typically reserved for particularly slow-witted children. Humans, the creature clicked and whirred. "We have observed your species. You will be categorized and integrated into our galactic hierarchy." The translation matrix rendered his words with a bureaucratic monotone that somehow made genocide sound like a mundane administrative process. What the Zarnax didn't anticipate was the detailed cultural report that accompanied their transmission. Buried within their own documentation was a chilling revelation. In Zarnax society, females of their species were considered administrative property. Not just second-class citizens, they were literally classified as movable assets, transferred between male counterparts like office furniture with reproductive capabilities. The holographic report displayed clinical diagrams showing female Zarnax being reassigned between governmental departments. Some were literally hung in public spaces as warnings, their bioluminescent bodies serving as living, or rather, dead decorations representing institutional power. Humanity's initial response wasn't anger. It was something far more dangerous, a cold, calculated assessment that would make the most ruthless military strategists look like kindergarten conflict resolution experts. General Marcus Harper, watching the transmission, muttered just loud enough for the microphones to catch, "Well, isn't that special?" Captain Elena Rodriguez, standing beside him, didn't even blink. Her fingers were already dancing across a holographic interface, calculating potential response strategies with the casual efficiency of someone ordering takeout. The Zarnax thought they were introducing humanity to their galactic order. Instead, they had just pressed the big red button labeled catastrophic mistake. The United Nations emergency session looked less like a diplomatic meeting and more like a war room where politeness had come to die. Ambassador Kai Okonkwo stood at the center of the holographic display, his perfectly pressed suit a stark contrast to the barely contained rage radiating from every delegate. "Let me be explicitly clear," Kai began, his Nigerian accent cutting through the tension like a surgical blade. "The Zarnax have not just insulted women. They've insulted the entire concept of sentient rights." He tapped a holographic control, and graphic images of Zarnax female subjugation flickered across the screens. General Marcus Harper, seated in the back of the room, let out a dry chuckle that sounded more like a gravel truck clearing its throat. "Diplomatic approach," he muttered to Captain Elena Rodriguez. "We're about 3 seconds from full-scale interstellar war." Elena Rodriguez was a study in controlled intensity. Her mixed Colombian-Japanese heritage had gifted her with a face that could switch from diplomatic smile to tactical grimace in milliseconds. Not war. She corrected, her fingers already running through complex military simulations, a precision-guided extinction event. The diplomatic channels didn't so much break down as they imploded spectacularly. The Zarnax's response to humanity's initial protest was a bureaucratic masterpiece of condescension. Their official communication classified the human rights complaint as a minor administrative misunderstanding and suggested humanity might benefit from re-education about galactic cultural norms. Kai's response was immediate and surgically precise. "Re-education," he repeated during the next transmission, one eyebrow raised so high it could have qualified as a separate diplomatic statement. "We'll re-educate you about the concept of basic sentient dignity." Within 72 hours, every major nation had consolidated its military resources. The United States, China, India, Russia, and the European Union historical rivals now moved with a unity that would have seemed impossible decades earlier. Technological research centers that had previously competed were now sharing quantum computing networks, advanced materials research, and weapon design platforms. "This isn't just about gender," General Harper explained in a closed-door military briefing. This is about showing a galactic empire that humanity doesn't just fight, we obliterate systemic oppression. Captain Rodriguez had already developed the initial strategic framework. Her approach wasn't about brute force, it was about surgical, psychological, and technological warfare that would make the Zarnax question their entire civilizational model. Ambassador Okonkwo's diplomatic team was simultaneously working on something equally devastating, a comprehensive galactic media campaign that would expose the Zarnax's atrocities to every sentient species in communication range. The weapon wasn't just going to be military might. It was going to be a complete systemic dismantling of the Zarnax's cultural infrastructure. They think we're going to send missiles, Elena remarked to Harper, a dangerous smile playing at the corner of her mouth. We're going to send something far more destructive. What's that? Harper asked. Our fundamental belief that every sentient being deserves dignity, she replied. And we're going to weaponize that belief. The Zarnax had made a fundamental mistake. They had treated humans as just another species to be categorized and controlled. They were about to learn the most expensive lesson in galactic history. The global research and development effort made the Manhattan Project look like a middle school science fair. Within weeks, the world's top research institutions had transformed from competitive silos into a single, ruthlessly efficient problem-solving machine. Dr. Anya Volkov from the Moscow Quantum Research Institute discovered something peculiar about Zarnax communication frequencies. They're not just communicating. She explained during a global video conference, they're basically running their entire civilization on a network that's about as secure as a screen door on a submarine. General Harper leaned back in his chair, a sardonic grin spreading across his weathered face. So you're telling me we can essentially hack their entire civilization? Hack? Anya scoffed. We're going to do something far more interesting. We're going to redesign their entire communication infrastructure while making them believe they're the ones in control. The technological development was nothing short of miraculous. Silicon Valley startups merged with military research labs. Aerospace engineers collaborated with social psychologists. Computer scientists worked alongside quantum physicists in a global effort that defied every previous model of international cooperation. Captain Rodriguez oversaw a particularly interesting project. We're not just building weapons, she told a room of bewildered engineers. We're building a comprehensive psychological warfare platform that will make their entire civilization question its fundamental existence. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A team of video game designers, typically known for creating elaborate virtual worlds, they developed an AI system that could predict and manipulate complex social structures with terrifying accuracy. Their lead designer, a 29-year-old named Jack Chen, explained it simply, "We've been designing social manipulation systems for years. We just never thought we'd get to use them to take down an alien empire." Global mobilization looked nothing like traditional military preparation. Instead of massive troop movements, the world saw something far more surreal. Entire server farms were converted into research stations. Tech companies redirected their satellite networks. Even social media platforms became intelligence-gathering tools, with algorithms designed to analyze Zarnax communication patterns. The most unexpected preparation method came from an international crowdsourcing effort. Millions of people worldwide began learning about Zarnax biology, culture, and communication methods. What started as a curiosity quickly became a global obsession. The online forums became distributed research centers, with amateur xenobiologists and linguists competing to provide the most innovative insights. It's like the entire planet turned into one massive, angry research university, Ambassador Okonkwo remarked during a briefing. And the final thesis is going to be written in the language of cosmic retribution. Quantum computing centers worked around the clock, developing communication intrusion technologies that made traditional hacking look like child's play. They weren't just planning to infiltrate the Zarnax communication network, they were planning to rewrite it from the inside out. The military strategy was equally unconventional. Traditional weapon development was replaced by something far more sophisticated. They were developing technologies designed to undermine the Zarnax's entire social and technological infrastructure. We're not going to destroy them with bombs. Elena Rodriguez explained during a classified briefing. We're going to destroy them by making their entire civilization realize how fundamentally broken their system is. Satellite networks were repurposed. Quantum communication channels were developed. An entire global infrastructure was transformed into a precision instrument of technological and psychological warfare. The Zarnax thought they were dealing with a young, fragmented species. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its military might, it was its ability to unite, adapt, and innovate with a ruthlessness that bordered on the miraculous. They hung their women, General Harper muttered, watching the global preparation unfold. And now they're going to learn why that was the most stupid decision in galactic history. The preparation was complete. Humanity was ready. The first strike wasn't a military assault, it was a communication apocalypse. At precisely 03:00 Galactic Standard Time, every Zarnax communication network simultaneously experienced what could only be described as a digital lobotomy. Billions of bureaucratic channels, administrative networks, and military communication grids transformed into a living nightmare of cascading system failures. Ambassador Krell Nax was in the middle of his morning administrative review when the first signs of chaos erupted. His primary communication terminal began displaying what could only be described as an existential comedy of errors. Official reports morphed into satirical documentaries about the Zarnax Empire's systemic oppression. The classified military strategies became animated educational videos about gender equality. What is happening? Krell Nax clicked and whirred, his exoskeletal appendages frantically manipulating control interfaces. The response was both brilliant and brutal. Every single Zarnax communication channel was simultaneously infiltrated, rewritten, and reprogrammed. Their entire bureaucratic infrastructure became a self-destructing monument to their own stupidity. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched the initial assault from a command center that looked more like a high-tech gaming room than a military installation. Stage 1 complete, she announced, her voice devoid of emotion but her eyes dancing with a predatory satisfaction. The human assault was psychological warfare taken to its absolute zenith. Military satellites previously hidden in plain sight began broadcasting a continuous stream of information directly into Zarnax communication networks. It wasn't just data. It was a comprehensive deconstruction of their entire societal model. Every Zarnax administrative center suddenly found its communication channels flooded with detailed historical records of societies that collapsed due to systemic oppression, psychological profiles exposing the fundamental flaws in their cultural structure, real-time translations of their own internal communications that highlighted their hypocrisy, animated infographics showing the economic inefficiency of their female subjugation policies. General Marcus Harper couldn't help but chuckle. We're not just attacking them, he told Rodriguez, we're giving them a masterclass in how spectacularly they've failed as a civilization. The Zarnax leadership's reaction was a masterpiece of bureaucratic confusion. High command communication transcripts would later be studied as a perfect example of institutional breakdown. Supreme Coordinator Vex Na's initial response was a model of administrative denial. This is clearly a minor communication disruption, he proclaimed to his senior staff, even as holographic displays around him transformed into educational presentations about feminist theory and societal equality. One junior administrator, later identified as a low-ranking official named Zor Nak, actually began taking notes during one of these impromptu educational broadcasts. His career would be both spectacularly short and legendarily memorable. The human strategy was multi-pronged. While communication networks were being systematically dismantled, precise quantum encrypted signals began reaching every single Zarnax colony. These weren't just messages. They were comprehensive psychological interventions designed to create maximum institutional doubt. We're not just attacking their systems, Elena explained to her team. We're attacking their entire conceptual framework of power and control. Zarnax military installations found their weapon systems mysteriously recalibrated. Navigation computers began displaying alternative historical narratives. Even their most secure communication channels became conduits for a systematic demolition of their cultural mythology. The shock wasn't just technological, it was existential. Supreme Coordinator Vex-Nar's final transmission, before complete communication breakdown, was a masterpiece of bureaucratic confusion. This is an unauthorized information redistribution event," he proclaimed, his clicking language translated into a tone of pure administrative panic. Ambassador Kai Okonkwo, watching the entire operation, allowed himself the smallest of smiles. "First lesson in galactic diplomacy," he muttered. "Never underestimate a species with nothing to lose and everything to prove." The first strike was complete. Humanity had just declared war not with weapons, but with information. And the Zarnax Empire was about to learn that some weapons are far more devastating than bombs. The Zarnax thought they understood warfare. They were about to get a masterclass in human creativity. As their communication networks collapsed, human strategists began implementing a multi-layered psychological assault that defied every conventional understanding of military engagement. Captain Elena Rodriguez had transformed warfare into an art form that was equal parts scientific precision and twisted improvisation. The first psychological exploit targeted the Zarnax's rigid hierarchical structure. Human agents carefully trained in xenopsychology began infiltrating their communication networks with meticulously crafted disinformation. Each message was designed to create maximum institutional doubt, introducing subtle inconsistencies that would make even the most loyal Zarnax administrator question their entire societal framework. "We're not just breaking their systems," Elena explained to her team. "We're causing an existential crisis at an institutional level." Their primary weapon was information weaponized into pure psychological devastation. Every Zarnax military installation began receiving contradictory orders. Supply chains mysteriously rerouted. Military units found their communication channels filled with fabricated historical records that systematically dismantled their understanding of their own civilization's history. General Marcus Harper oversaw a particularly ingenious operation. Using advanced quantum communication techniques, human operatives began introducing subtle psychological triggers into Zarnax communication networks. Military commanders would receive transmission that appeared to come from their own high command, each message slightly undermining institutional authority. The most brilliant stroke came from an unexpected source. A team of sociologists and game theorists developed an AI system that could predict and manipulate Zarnax institutional behavior with terrifying accuracy. They didn't just understand the Zarnax, they could essentially puppet their entire bureaucratic response. Ambassador Kai Okonkwo described it with characteristic dry humor. "We're not fighting a war. We're conducting the most elaborate performance art piece in galactic history." The turning point came when human operatives discovered the Zarnax's fundamental psychological vulnerability. Their entire civilization was built on a hierarchical structure so rigid that any perceived challenge to authority triggered complete institutional paralysis. Human strategists exploited this with surgical precision. They began introducing communication vectors that simultaneously challenged and validated Zarnax leadership, creating a psychological feedback loop that essentially turned the Zarnax's own bureaucratic nature against itself. Entire Zarnax military sectors found themselves trapped in recursive administrative loops. Commanders received orders that contradicted previous instructions, creating a systemic breakdown that was both mathematically precise and darkly comedic. "It's like we've weaponized bureaucratic confusion," Elena remarked, watching real-time data streams showing Zarnax military units essentially imploding from internal contradictions. The unconventional combat approach reached its peak when human operatives began using the Zarnax's own communication infrastructure against them. Quantum encrypted signals introduced microscopic doubt into every level of their institutional memory. Military units found their navigation systems subtly compromised. Supply chains became labyrinthine nightmares of misdirection. Supreme Coordinator Vex-Nar's attempts to restore order became increasingly desperate. His communication attempts were systematically undermined, with each message becoming more incoherent than the last. "We are experiencing a minor administrative recalibration," Vex-Nar proclaimed in one transmission, his clicking language translated into a tone of pure administrative panic. The message was simultaneously broadcast across multiple channels, each with slightly different content, ensuring maximum institutional confusion. The human strategy was ruthlessly elegant. They weren't just fighting a war, they were conducting a systematic dismantling of an entire civilization's psychological infrastructure. They hung their women, General Harper muttered, watching the operation unfold, and now they're learning that humanity doesn't just fight back. We deconstruct. The Zarnax thought they understood conflict. Humanity was about to give them a postgraduate course in psychological warfare. And the final exam was going to be brutal. The Zarnax Empire didn't collapse. It imploded. What remained was less a civilization and more a cautionary tale of institutional stupidity. Their once mighty galactic infrastructure became a comprehensive case study in how not to run a society. Universities across multiple star systems would spend generations analyzing the complete and total systemic breakdown. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the UN peacekeeping vessel, watching the final dissolution of Zarnax administrative centers. "Not a shot fired," she remarked to General Harper. "We weaponized their own bureaucracy." The consequences were both profound and hilariously extensive. Every Zarnax administrative center found itself restructured from the inside out. Their entire societal model, which had relied on systematic oppression, essentially cannibalized itself. Female Zarnax, who had been treated as administrative assets, suddenly found themselves in leadership positions, guided by the comprehensive educational materials humanity had so helpfully introduced into their communication networks. Supreme Coordinator Vexnar's final official communication was a masterpiece of unintentional comedy. "This is a scheduled administrative realignment," he proclaimed, a statement that would become a galactic inside joke for generations. The broader galactic community watched in stunned silence. Other spacefaring civilizations quickly realized that humanity wasn't just another species to be categorized or controlled. They were a force of nature that could deconstruct an entire civilization using nothing more than information, psychology, and an absolutely ruthless commitment to systemic justice. Ambassador Kai Okonkwo handled the inevitable diplomatic fallout with characteristic precision. When asked about the complete dismantling of the Zarnax Empire, he would simply raise an eyebrow and say, "They were given multiple opportunities to reconsider their institutional practices." Humanity's newfound galactic reputation was complicated. They weren't conquerors. They were something far more terrifying, a civilization that could destroy you without firing a single conventional weapon. The comedic epilogue came unexpectedly. During the first galactic diplomatic conference following the Zarnax incident, the representatives from various star systems approached human delegates with a mixture of terror and reluctant respect. "We heard what you did to the Zarnax," one alien representative stammered. General Harper's response was classic. "We're very good listeners," he said with a completely straight face. The underlying message was clear: humanity would not tolerate systemic oppression, and not in their solar system. Not in any solar system. As Elena Rodriguez put it during a classified briefing, "We didn't start this war. We finished it." The Zarnax thought they were introducing humanity to their galactic order. Instead, they had just pressed the big red button labeled catastrophic mistake. And humanity was just getting started.